Since our tomato harvest is now at or a little past its peak, I thought it might be interesting to compile a bit of an overview and review of the varieties we've been growing this year, touching on our experience growing them in our hot, dry climate here in the Sacramento Valley, and give my admittedly subjective take on the culinary qualities of each one. Full disclosure, I don't exactly have the world's most sophisticated palate, so please take my assessments of flavor and texture with a grain of salt. Also, in case anyone is interested, I've listed where I obtained the seeds for each of these varieties in the comments. Here we go. First up are the two indeterminate cherry tomato varieties we grew this season, Sungold and Black Cherry. I inadvertently hampered cherry tomato production this year by assuming I could prune the plants as aggressively as I could our indeterminate sauce and slicing tomatoes. We grew one Sungold plant and two black cherry plants. I then pruned each one down to two stems apiece. While pruning cherry tomatoes does make for a more manageable and neat looking plant, it doesn't seem to encourage the development of larger fruits. It does, however, result in far fewer fruits than were produced by the wild and overgrown cherry tomato plants we had growing last year. Making matters worse, one of our black cherry tomato plants was afflicted with and ultimately killed by an as of yet unidentified ailment. Long story short, this year's cherry tomato crop is small but delicious. So far, we've harvested a total of 6 pounds of Sungolds and black cherries combined. I'd venture most tomato growers are familiar with Sungold tomatoes and know that they're one of the sweetest varieties available. Eaten at peak ripeness, a Sungold could easily be called garden candy. The black cherry, however, it's not quite as sweet as a Sungold. It is slightly more tart and acidic. I don't consider this to be a bad thing. Not all recipes work well with what's essentially a little yellow sugar bomb. I like the black cherry tomatoes, especially in things like fresh salsas. I really like them dried and ground into a powder. The black cherry powder makes an excellent tomato soup once it's reconstituted, makes an excellent chili base. It's great when you add just enough water to make it into a tomato paste if a recipe calls for that. You can make a sauce out of a tomato powder. I prefer, canned sauces, but in a pinch, the right amount of water added back to a powder will make a great sauce. Our one and only slicing variety this year is the indeterminate Cherokee Purple. And honestly, if you're only going to pick one slicer, the Cherokee Purple is a great choice. These have turned out not only to be a good heat tolerant variety, but a variety that seems to thrive in the hot and dry conditions of the Sacramento Valley. We've already harvested 38 pounds of Cherokee purple tomatoes, and that was off of a total of 5 plants, each with two stems, pruned to two stems. And we actually have a few pounds still green on the vine. In terms of flavor, the Cherokee Purple is sweet, but not overwhelmingly so. It isn't too acidic and has a firm, pleasant texture that lacks even a hint of mealiness. A slice of Cherokee Purple will make even the best burger or sandwich better. They can also simply be eaten on their own. I like them just with a little bit of salt and chopped up basil on them, and that's a snack. I honestly don't typically snack on plain tomatoes, but this is the exception. The only negative thing that I have to say about the Cherokee Purple is the fruits are a bit prone to cat facing and cracking, as you can see here. This isn't much of a problem for me as I'm not currently a market gardener. These issues are mostly aesthetic. Cracking does reduce shelf life a bit, so badly affected fruits, they're either promptly eaten or they're sliced and thrown under the hydrator for long term storage. Up next, we have the classic and much revered indeterminate sauce tomato, the San Marzano. These have done well for us this season, and our 8 plants have yielded about 38 pounds of good, healthy fruit so far. Unfortunately, like most sauce and paste tomatoes, San Marzanos are prone to blossom end rot, and ours were no exception. I'm estimating about a third of all fruits on our San Marzano plants are being lost to end rot. Still, 38 pounds is nothing to complain about, so I'm pretty happy. Having few seeds, little moisture, and thin skins, these are particularly easy to process into canned sauces, salsas, stewed tomatoes, etc. Flavors admittedly underwhelming and a bit bland, but honestly, that's fine. Processing and canning tend to concentrate sugars and enhance flavors. Also, I'm of the opinion that paste tomatoes are grown for ease of processing, not for mind blowing flavor in their raw state. All right, I can't help but get excited about this next variety. So, Rio Grande tomatoes were a new variety for us. They were selected based on research that touted them as being an extraordinarily heat tolerant and blossom end rot resistant determinate sauce tomato. This assessment turned out to be 100% true. These tomatoes absolutely thrived this season. 8 plants yielded us 46 pounds of blossom end rot free tomatoes. Um, and there's a few left out there on the vines, but since these are a determinate variety, they've pretty much done what they're going to do. Anyway, out of that entire haul, only a handful were affected by end rot. And by a handful, I mean five, literally. I can't recommend these enough for growers in hot, dry climates. If you want a real easy to grow, resilient, prolific, robust sauce tomato, this is it. Like most sauce tomatoes, the flavor's a bit bland. You probably wouldn't want a salad full of them. They were, however, pretty good sliced thin as a topping for a garden veggie pizza. They seem to be a little higher in moisture than the San Marzanos, and about even in terms of seed content. I don't anticipate these are going to be all that difficult to process down. I've already tried blanching a few, just in a dish the other night, and the skins came off real easy. So that's encouraging. Like the Rio Grande, the determinate sauce variety Oroma was new for us. Also, like the Rio Grande, this variety was said to be exceptionally heat and end rot tolerant. Unlike the Rio Grande, it wasn't. Our aromas were something of a contradiction for us. The plants themselves were, for lack of a better term, weak and weepy. Only three of the aromas we started under grow lights survived to transplant. The plants we got in the ground had wispy branches and sad looking, droopy, though not wilted, leaves. I figured they were doomed to end their lives as a failed experiment and I would never bother with them again. Then, strangely, those sad and weak looking plants began to develop fruit. Actually, a lot of fruit, and a lot of them were big, some as big as about as big as my fist. I got my hopes up. Then, most of those fruits were absolutely slammed by the sledgehammer that is blossom end rot. More than half of all fruits were lost to BER. This limited our total harvest to 15 pounds. I would call this variety a no-go for future seasons if it weren't for the fact that the fruits that did ripen without succumbing to end rot are absolutely gorgeous. The fruits you see here are actually fairly small examples, and as I cut them open, you'll see that they're almost seedless. Additionally, the aroma is surprisingly flavorful for a sauce tomato. It's no sun gold or Cherokee purple, of course, but it is notably sweeter than the San Marzano and Rio Grande, and actually has a kind of a pleasant tartness to it. If I can just figure out how to fix this variety's blossom end rot issues, which I am researching heavily, and I'm going to really dig into that into the future, I think this could become a top producer for us. All right. Well, there's certainly been some challenges affecting the season's tomatoes, many of which were definitely self inflicted. I'm pretty happy with the harvest. It currently stands at a total of 140 pounds across all varieties. I can't be too unhappy with that, considering I'm growing in a pretty small backyard here. Also, our tomato season might not even be dwindling. There are plenty of San Marzanos remaining on the vines, and it dawned on me that we won't have a frost here in the Sacramento Valley probably until late November at the earliest. So, as you can see with some of these little guys in the frame here, I've started a second round of determinate sauce tomatoes. I'm thinking that this will set me up for a decent fall harvest if I can coax them through the hottest part of the summer, which is honestly probably yet to come. Last year we had our hottest temperatures in early September. Um, if you kind of like where I seem to be going with this whole project, and can stand hearing my voice for 10 to 20 minutes at a time, I hope you'll tune back in and kind of see how it's all going. Thanks again for watching.